Can I just tell you how hard it was for me to accept that part of me? Like, I literally would be like, why can't I be like everybody else? Why? They're all so sweet. They all are happy, caring, like wearing sequins in the morning. And I just.
Hi everybody, welcome back to Movie Scenes and Great Books. I'm your host, Joy Victoria.
And I'm Christina Harris, your co-host.
And today, you guys are in for the biggest treat.
Absolutely. Please welcome a living legend, a living miracle, because you have to be a miracle to write all of these books.
Yes.
I'm so amazed. She is an amazing wife, a wonderful mother, a holy warrior, and a sweetheart. Please welcome the beautiful Miss Lisa Bevere.
Oh my gosh, you guys are so sweet. Well, you know, I am a flawed wife, I am a flawed mother, and I'm a flawed Christian. But the truth is, I am always wanting to grow, and that is what we all have to be, right?
And that's what you help us do. And I forgot grandmother.
Oh,
you look way too young, but you are grandmother.
Yes, to 9, 4 sons, and expecting my 9th grandchild. So we 5 grandsons, 4 granddaughters. One of our grandsons is in heaven. But so we are having to have a spreadsheet for just the grandkids' birthdays.
For birthdays. I love it.
It's actually my oldest grandson's 15th birthday.
Wow.
You have a 15-year-old grandson?
I have a 15-year-old grandson.
Wow.
So I'm going to be married 42 years, October the 2nd.
Wow.
God is so faithful.
That's incredible.
You guys have done well. You really have. Yeah, and so I have to give you the honor you deserve as far as your books. So I have to read all of the titles. How many books have you written, Miss Lisa?
I need to memorize this. I can't remember. Maybe 14? I don't know. I'd have to.
I don't know. I think I counted over 20. I think I did.
You're right. I don't know. Every time I write a book, I say I'm done. That's it. I'm empty. I have nothing else to say. And then, I'll just look and I'll see something. And especially with this book, this was the first time, The Fight for Female was the first time I actually felt that I needed to engage women with culture. Whereas in the past, it's always been women to women, women of faith, giving women permission to flourish, giving women connections to see how we can have healthy connections. When I wrote Lioness Arising, I was like, hey, we're not doing this well in real life. So let's go look to the animal kingdom. Let's look at what this looked like if we actually celebrated one another's strengths and understood that your strength is not deducted from me. And so, this was the first time that I felt like I needed to approach something a little differently.
Oh, it turned out amazing. It turned out amazing. But I want to do some honorable mentions here. So, Lisa Bevere, you've written Lioness Arising, Without Rival. That was a big one. The Story of Marriage, Fight for Female, which we're going to really dive into today. Girls with Swords. That was really popular. I remember when that came out. Adamant, Godmothers. I appreciate that. Fiercely Loved, Out of Control and Loving It, Fight Like a Girl, Kiss the Girls and Made Them Cry, Be Angry but Don't Blow It, Be Strong, You Are Not What You Weigh, Pathway to His Presence, which you wrote with your husband, Mr. John Bevere?
Yes.
That's amazing. The True Measure of a Woman, It's Not How You Look, It's What You See, Nurture, Look Beyond What You See, Give Up and Get Free, Discover Your Inner Beauty, Healing for the Angry Heart, And probably, I hope I got them all, but that is
Wow.
Those are like a
miraculous.
lot of workbooks. I think those last few were the publisher did a spin-off from some of the other books to put them in a smaller format. And they relaunched You're Not What You Weigh to be the other book. It's not How You Look, It's What You See. They relaunched that. So but yeah, that does.
But God brought it all through you.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
really amazing. Yeah, so we're so excited to get into the fight for female. So tell us about the fight for female and what prompted you to write this book.
Yes. So I felt like women were being silenced and sexualized. And this area of silenced and sexualized is such a narrow path for women to walk. So I'm like, what's going on here? Like, I don't even have daughters. I have granddaughters. And I'm like, what is happening? And then I found that every time a woman would raise her voice, there was outcry by women against women for saying, this isn't okay. Yeah. So I just was shocked that we had the church silencing its daughter's voice, saying, hey, woman was last created, first to sin, she shouldn't have a voice. And then over here, we have men can be women, make way. And I was like, what's going on here? And I had a dream in 2016 that made absolutely no sense at the time, where I had a dream where I walked into a green room of dragons, women carrying baby dragons. And I'm like, wait, why are you holding this baby dragon close to your chest? And it was dressed in children's clothing. I was like, what's going on? So I went from woman to woman, Joy and Christina. I was like, do you know you're holding a dragon? And they're like, oh, no, these are different. These are the wise, kind dragons. And I was like, no. There's no such things as wise and kind dragons. There is no agreement between daughters and dragons. So I went, in this dream, one of those frantic dreams where you're like, hey, somebody needs to listen to me. They were jewel toned, rainbow colored, dressed in children's clothing. And one of the women was like, here, just pet my dragon. Don't be afraid. I was like, no, I'm not going to pet your dragon. That's saying it's safe. And at the end of the dream, I turned away from a woman. Another one thrust her dragon towards me and said, here, hold it. And in my dream, I grabbed the dragon by the neck and I broke its neck. And I woke up and I was flat on my back in the bed. My arms were flying. I'm like, what just happened? And so I typed the whole thing in and I sent it to somebody that was supposed to be good at interpreting things. I'm like, I'm going to need some help on this one. I've been scared about dinosaurs. I've never dreamed about dragons. And I've never dreamed about rainbow colored dragons with women holding them and them dressed in children's clothing. Like, this is bizarre. So the year was 2016. I sent it to someone. They're like, we don't have anything. And so, I just was like, all right, maybe that's just about preaching truth. Literally, when I wrote Adamant, I had this kind of in the back of my mind that, we need to stop being about opinions and we need to be about truth. And so I thought, okay, I'm addressing this. And then 2020 starts happening. 2021, I start watching the invasion of women's spaces by men. I start watching a generation being attacked by the enemy. Because in my mind, when we have a generation that is told their formation is flawed, then it becomes very difficult for them to trust God with their transformation. And so the enemy is so cunning. He's whispering to an entire generation, oh, your house divided. Your gender identity is this, but your body is that. You can't trust God. You need to fix this. You need to take a hold of this, and you need to recreate yourself and your own image or your own identity. And I was like, what is happening here? Why are we listening to the enemy? And so we have acted like our existence is arbitrary. When our God says that, Joy, you were woven in your mother's womb with intentionality and wonder, that God wove inside and then out, that God was involved in your life before you drew your first breath. He was weaving, he was saying there'll become a day. I mean, just this whole idea that God writes every day, every moment of our life in a book before the first one began. That God is a God. And people say, well, that sounds like predestination. No, God is this amazing God who ends something, then he begins it. You know, God is independent of time. He's an eternity past, eternity future, and in this moment. And so I just started to think, what is the enemy trying to do to this generation? Because I believe that this generation is being so targeted. And when I say this generation, millennials, Gen Zs, and Gen Alpha, not because they're victims or weak, but because they're threats. And the enemy knows his time is short. And he's like, I'm going to do everything I can to divide them from their parents, to diminish who they are to their sexuality. I'm going to divide them from culture is going to constantly be divided. We're going to divide Democrat, Republican. We're going to divide black, white. We're going to divide male, female. We're going to divide Christians. And, you know, it's just like division.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to, as kingdom people, stand in the middle and declare truth, which means we're going to get shot at from both sides. And it's okay. And when I say stand in the middle, I'm not talking about the middle of compromise.
Yeah.
I'm talking about speaking the kingdom of God into a chaotic world of confusion. And so for me, the fight for female was a reclaiming a divine identity, that female is not an arbitrary presentation, but a divine entrustment by God.
Mm-hmm.
And that female is terrifying to the enemy, because in the beginning, enmity between the woman and the serpent is now between the woman, which would be the bride, the church, and the dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And when I wrote this book, I had no idea the book was launching in the year of the dragon. I had no idea it would be an election year. And I know it's the Chinese year of the dragon. And dragons, they create chaos and destruction.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, the dream was so interesting. My daughter's like, don't ask her that, but you woke up like totally startled. I was thinking, when you broke the dragon's neck, was it bleeding? Because I know they were jewel tone, but was it like a gory dream?
What happened was the motion of doing this woke me up.
Okay.
I didn't ever see, like, nothing was severed. There was no gore. It was just broken. And I woke up, I was like, what just happened?
And I like how you're pushing a message of self-acceptance, and also brought to the forefront that Jesus felt uncomfortable in his body, how he could relate to all walks of life.
And that was the crucial part for me, because I think the church does a really good job of saying that's wrong or nothing's wrong.
Uh-huh.
They kind of, or nothing's wrong, instead of bringing people to the one who makes things right. And so I had a conversation with a younger Christian. She's a very successful businesswoman, which I find sometimes, and I hope I'm not being hateful here, but I find sometimes that when somebody is successful in the business world, ministers are afraid to tell them the truth.
Wow.
Because they don't want to.
I could see that.
This person is not a partner with my ministry. This person is a friend. And so she asked me, she said, if Jesus was sitting here with you and I and my friend who believes she was born in the wrong body, what would he say to her? And I said, well, first of all, he would say, I love you. Then he would say, you're not a mistake. And then he would say, I understand. And I could tell when I said that, she was like, what? And I said, okay, a couple of principles. First of all, Philippians chapter 2 tells us that Jesus was the Son of God who set aside his divine form, emptied himself of his divine privileges, and put on flesh. I have only known life in the flesh, but Jesus had a divine form, and he became us so we could become him. So, and it's interesting, Philippians says that he did not consider equality with God something to be grasped. So when we try to remake ourselves in our own image, we're actually grasping at equality with God. Look, it's what Adam and Eve did. The enemy's like, I know this works. Let's just do this again. Then we also have this beautiful presentation of Jesus in Hebrews 4, that he is a high priest. Now, I'm not saying Jesus has ever been transgender because I don't believe that, but I do believe that Jesus understands that we all of us have a longing for more. We have a longing for beauty. We have a longing for more. And it's interesting, you know, we've learned from scriptures that God has written eternity on our heart. God makes everything beautiful in its time, and he has written eternity on our heart. So what happens is we think our more is here. We think it's more money, more things, more attention, more love, more relationships, when God is like, you have an eternal longing for more. And that more that you long for now will truly be met then. I could show you it, but I would be ashamed. You might even be able to see a little bit through the window. I have a tomato jungle out there. I don't know what I was thinking. I planted way too many tomato plants, and then I didn't like stake them, and they have taken over my backyard. So we have tomatoes galore in my house. But if you open up a tomato and you isolate a tomato seed, you look at that. You look at it as like bland. It's like a beigey, nondescript color. It's a nondescript shape. You cannot look at a tomato seed and see the tomato. You just see something. You might even think, oh, that's a green pepper seed. I mean, like green bell pepper. It doesn't distinguish itself. But when you put that seed into the ground, it sprouts and it grows a plant that grows tomatoes and leaves and green and red. And this seed is contained potential. And you and I are seeds, Paul says, that when we go into the ground and die, who we really are comes up in eternity. So why would I be comfortable in my seed form when I am created to be something I don't even have a frame of reference for yet?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, there's also something amazing. I would say in the last couple months, this was kind of funny, but I realized that God used you to help me accept my whole self. I was leaving the room and my husband said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to watch Lisa preach." And he says, "That's your mentor, huh?" And I'm like, is she my mentor? And I remember asking the Lord, can Lisa be my mentor? But when I pressed play, me and you were dressed exactly alike. And I was like, okay. But
like, I see it.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, that's a God nod. She's my mentor. But it was so profound. I recognized that there was a part of myself for many years that I was afraid of. And in my mind, I thought it was like my gangster side. Like, wait, Miss Lisa's make me feel comfortable with my gangster side. But the Lord showed me, he said, it's not gangsters, warrior. He said gangsters intend to harm, but warriors intend to give life.
Yes, they fight to protect. Yeah, that's the difference between terrorists and soldiers.
Yeah.
Terrorists inspire terror. Gangsters, they rule by intimidation, dominating. But warriors, they fight for life.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, and can I just tell you how hard it was for me to accept that part of me? Like, I literally would be like, why can't I be like everybody else? Why? They're all so sweet. They all are happy, carrying, like wearing sequins in the morning. And I just
sequins in the morning.
And high heels. And I'm in combat boots. I don't understand like, what's wrong with me. And I remember we'd moved to Colorado, and we were at a church, and I started kind of trying to dress like the pastor's wife. And my husband was like, listen here right now. I didn't marry her. I married you.
That's right.
It was like, I am not okay with, and I mean, like, I've always had long hair. I think I did a short haircut. I look back, I look like a mushroom. I'm like, what was I thinking? Where were my friends? But I finally had to sit down and say, who am I? I need to stop looking at other people to define me. And God had it in so many ways, in so many different incidents. God had to take me back to who I was before. So I lost an eye to cancer when I was 5. And they say when you have some kind of traumatic, experience, which I know trauma now is kind of like my mom didn't let me buy a designer purse. Well, I would say losing an eye to cancer is trauma. So when you have those kind of things, they have the power to define your life. And I remember so I'm in high school, there's me and there's another girl who had lost an eye to an accident. She drove a car. I was like, I'm getting a motorcycle license. I mean, I was like, if you tell me limits, I will fight you. I was like, every time they said, now that you only have one eye, you probably shouldn't do A, B, and C. What I heard was buy a motorcycle. I heard you should do all of these things. I just was like, I'm sorry. Before I became a Christian, I told my dad was like, well, what would you like to do? And I said, kind of between an assassin or an astronaut. I'm not sure which one. And my dad was like, I'm sorry I showed you too many. I think, growing up in the 60s, you had those spy movies, and I was like, I think I could do that. And then I became a Christian. I was like, well, assassin and astronaut doesn't fit into this Christian mold. And now I'm not sure what I'm doing. Do I need to have my head covered? And I've got one eye. And I've just, I don't know if you notice, I am a dual citizen. So I'm an Italian citizen and a US citizen. So I've, my dad involved with the Gambino crime family on one side, and then my sweet husband, who has basically been a good person all of his life. I come from crime family, Manhattan Project, serial adulterers, serial alcoholics. I come into John's family. His mom is like, we've never had divorce in our family before.
Yeah.
That's not my name. I'm not divorced. I feel like I brought everything bad and John brought everything good. And John was like, God was like, hey, I don't care about John's good or your bad. I'm not fully.
Yeah.
And he said, it's going to be the beginning of 1,000 generations. For me, the fight for a female was about recovering 1,000 generations. And then here was something else that was a surprise for me. I don't want to be known as the demon diva. I did a podcast on the demonic realm, and I was shocked by how many people. It was like 350,000 views. And what happened was, I used to always say, hey, Satan's running talking on the powerful, but he's defeated. What I have found out is we have opened doors to him that used to be closed. I mean, you've got a screen behind me. The things trying to come in through television, the things coming in through music. I literally feel like the enemy is constantly attempting to agents with pornography, the occult, with all of these, like our children actually restructuring their brain. I saw recently a mom who put her 18-month-old baby in front of, I think it was Coco Melon, and when she was like, uh-oh, maybe my daughter shouldn't be watching this much, the daughter literally went through withdrawals, like an addiction withdrawal, like screaming, because there are certain things that we're not supposed to be putting in front of our children, that our children, where their brain is being formed, they're not supposed to be placated. They're supposed to be challenged. They're supposed to go outside. They're supposed to play. They're supposed to have challenges. They're supposed to fall. There's all of this stuff they're supposed to learn in a family. And I just felt like women were losing their voice in so many different fronts where they used to have value and voice. And again, I'm all about women, understanding their season of life. I was a stay-home mom. I wrote books so my books could travel and I could stay home. A lot of people think I just traveled all the time when my kids were little. I did work full-time with my firstborn. And I said, Jesus, I didn't have a baby to have him in daycare. If I can do something different, I'm going to do it. And you know what that meant for John and I? We had one car. One car. I mean, all our friends had two. We had one. And I said, I'm going to take this season and I'm going to be seasoned by staying home with my kids, which, I think about 6 months into the second son being born and staying home, I was like, this was a mistake. I want to go back to work full time. No one celebrating what you do. John was like, you said God told you. I'm like, pregnant women lie. Pregnant women say anything. Don't believe me. I need to go back to work. Because I wasn't getting any affirmation. I was feeling like a failure. My house wasn't clean, but I pressed through. And the thing I am the most proud of is not that I've written a bunch of books. It's not that I have a New York Times bestselling book. The thing I'm the most proud of is that my boys actually want to be in my life.
Yeah.
That my grandkids can wander down to my house at any point. That my daughter-in-laws actually love me. That I have seen the redemption of God from a broken family. I have seen the faithfulness of God. I'm thrilled when I see my boys doing marriage better and parenting better. And I feel like that is the redemption of God.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And
Yes.
I can hear the Lord saying, I put passion in you and Lisa. That's what it is. It's passion. And the Lord showed me that we need to accept that because it gives us the courage to say the hard thing. Mm-hmm. And your family is a testament of the fight and the passion that God put in you. Because when you have a family and that is doing the will of God, I know you had to fight for that.
Yeah.
And I like in the book where you said, if you don't fight the dragon, you're going to serve the dragon. There's no neutral area. Yeah, that's very powerful.
Yeah.
I wish there was. What were you going to say, sweet Joy?
Yes. And I was going to say, just parking on something you said, you brought up the occult. And this was something that I wanted to speak with you about today. I'm Generation Z, so I know like amongst my peers and also like millennial women, witchcraft is becoming more and more popular. Like it's just something a lot of women are clinging to. You hear celebrities referring to themselves as witches, but good witches. Like I'm a good witch. That's kind of the popular phrase right now. So I wanted to hear your perspective on one, why do you think so many women and girls are clinging to witchcraft and the occult today? And then two, what would you say just to address that in general?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I think we all know that we were created for a supernatural power. Like there is a longing, like what you talked about. We have passion and we want to have authority in the spirit. So witchcraft is interesting. Witchcraft draws on the power of the earth. And God was like, no, don't fall on spells. Don't divination. Witchcraft is always paired with divination. And divination means the imitation of the divine. And if you go to the origin of witchcraft and divination, it was taught to the women by the fallen angels. So the angels that married women. I mean, there's some fascinating things.
Yeah.
Back in the pre-stories of like the book of Enoch or the book of Ezra, like I'm not saying they're canonized books, but they got some stories. They taught the dividing of roots. They taught abortion. They taught all of these different things. And so there's this dynamic where we can choose, are we going to get our power from a Luciferian source, which would be witchcraft, which is drawing from our own strength. And it has to be like a certain moon and a certain, or are we going to be innocent of what is evil and excellent of what is good? And instead of casting spells, we speak a word. And the word that we speak is the word of God. And the word of God that we have is drawing on celestial power. And we don't have to follow that to perform it. God watches over his word to perform it, and it doesn't return void. Witchcraft, though, on the other hand, if you don't do everything perfect, then it comes back on you. And those witchcraft counselors are familiar spirits, and they are not a friend. They are not a friend. They don't have expression. They're disembodied spirits. They don't have expression, so they gain expression through the people who yield to them. And so they will use these people as long as it is to their benefit to be used.
Yeah.
But God doesn't use people. God anoints them, he heals them, he transforms them. When I say he doesn't use them, I'm saying in the way that Satan uses people, like picks them up when he's done, tosses them aside. God, I mean, I love that the promise of God says that he is there in our youth and he is there in our old age. That David said, I've never seen the righteous forsaken, nor their seed begging for bread. So it isn't just about one generation, it is generations. So I do think the hunger for witchcraft is the hunger for the supernatural. That's why people like Harry Potter. That's why people, they like magic. They know that they have some kind of connection to a world outside of their seen world. They're just looking at the wrong world. Now, having said that, I was out to dinner with somebody last night, and I would say that they're from a very beautiful but different camp of belief than maybe some of the things I've lived. We're both Christians, but I got introduced to the power of God right away. So when John shared with me about Jesus and I prayed and made Jesus the Lord and Savior of my life, he said, now you're saved. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, it means you're whole again, spirit, soul, and body. And I said, well, wait, so I can have cheese now? And he's like, what? I said, so I can't eat dairy products. So you're saying I can have cheese now that I'm a Christian? And John was like, oh my gosh, what in the world have I just done? So he grabs a hold of me and he's like, just repeat after me. And he's like so nervous. He can't even remember what I said I had, which was lactose intolerance. He said, all right. He's like, just say Jesus. And I'm like, Jesus. He said, thank you for healing me. I said, thank you for healing me. He said, now say the thing. I said, lactose intolerance. And I felt the power of God, which felt like love, go into my stomach and untie all the knots that have been there since I was 15. Because when I was 15 was when all of the lactose intolerance really kicked in. They say a lot of times as you're young, your stomach will be able to handle it a little bit. And as you get older, your stomach just can't handle it. And I knew that I had experienced the healing power of God.
Stop it. I need that prayer. I'm so gluten-free, allergic to corn. I'm going to pray that prayer.
Oh, listen.
And you know about that.
Yeah, and you know what? If I don't know if you're watching what's going on. I mean, it's like they're trying to kill us with our food. I mean, they're trying to kill us with the toothpaste. They're trying to kill us with the food. They're trying to kill us. And unless we all have a basement where we can't get aluminum dropped on it, maybe now is the time to really understand that when we offer up our food with prayer and thanksgiving, it is sanctified. And that if you eat anything deadly, it will not harm us. These are offering up our food now requires faith. I'm praying over. I mean, I think I watched something yesterday that was like dishwasher soap layers, 9 layers of poison. I'm like, what in the world? There's nothing right. We're all alive now. So we're going to have to live by faith in the faithfulness of God. We have to believe that the transformative power of God is going to distinguish the people of God. So like I got totally healed of lactose intolerance, but I still have a fake eye. Now I'm like, that would be great. Hey, I'd go to bed tonight, wake up with you, realize I'd love that. But you know what? I've also learned that God is a healer.
Yes.
But he always does it the way I want him to do it. And there are things he heals through doctors. There's things he heals supernaturally, and there's things he heals in heaven. And people don't like to hear me say that. But I am a broken form of what I will be in heaven. We've already talked about
Amen.
But I'm going to agree with you that you can, because it's crazy to have lactose intolerance and gluten intolerance, and like it's hard.
Yes.
Now being Italian, I am a food snob, so I only imported from Italy. So, and if you have it imported from Italy, probably will be able to eat it because they don't put gluten in their stuff.
Note it.
Thank you
Thank
for telling us that.
Yeah,
Amen.
but I mean, I literally, if I go to a restaurant, I'm like, "Where's your flour from?" And they're like, "Oh, we make our own pasta." I'm like, "Where's your flour from?" And they're like, "It's double O from Italy." I'm like, "Okay, I'll order pasta."
Wow.
Oh,
Good
yeah.
to know. Good to know.
If it's not from Italy, if you look at it and it doesn't say made in Italy,
Noted.
Don't-
I'm gonna remember. That's up here. I'll remember that one.
this will be your Italian mother saying this too.
Yeah.
But so I experienced the power of God. And then I decided I want to believe that God can do more than I can ask, hope, pray, or believe. That's what Ephesians said. So I believe that God will be whatever we ask him to be.
Yes.
Ask him to be good teacher. That's all he's going to be to us. We call him Lord, then he's going to be the master of everything in our life. If I call him healer, he'll be healer.
Yes.
And I've seen God heal women of STDs. Of course, now it's called STI. I don't know if you know that they changed it again. So I've seen God heal women of STIs. I've seen God because his word is alive. And so when you have the word of God, you can send it into the body and it heals them. Just as witchcraft, spell can be sent into somebody and it can sow destruction. Even if it gives healing for a short time, it has destruction in the end.
So the end is kind of like the differing factor between, God's supernatural and the devil's supernatural.
Divination is always an imitation of the higher form.
Yeah.
And why would we worship that which is less when we can worship the one who is the most high?
Amen.
And also divination or witchcraft is about my power, my choices, my will. As God's word is his choice and his will. Like, I have so many people that say, well, I'm praying for this, but I'm not sure if it's the right thing to pray for. And I'm like, well, you're not going to get it if it's not.
Yeah.
It says, if you don't receive, it's because you ask amiss.
Yeah.
And now the one thing that I would say that's kind of still, I feel like is missing in the church is we have the world out there saying, you can trust your heart. Well, your unregenerated, unborn again heart is deceptive. Yeah. But when you and I got born again, what did God do?
Gave us a new heart.
Gave us a new heart.
Yeah.
And he gave us what? His Holy Spirit. So I think the church has actually neglected teaching people how to develop a hearing heart, how to hear the voice of God. And now the word of God will never contradict the heart of God. So like, if you're like, well, I really believe I'm supposed to pray for that person to divorce his wife and marry me. That's never going to be the will of God. Never. Well, I feel that in my heart. No, that's deception. So you have to have the word and the spirit. But I believe that there's been a lot of misturning, even where it says the heart is deceptive. Who can sound it? Who can understand it? God actually says, God, search the heart and mind. He's like, the next sentence, he says, I can. And then he's basically, okay, you got a problem here. You've got a heart of stone. Yeah. And I'm going to have to take out your heart of stone. And I'm going to have to give you a heart of flesh. And we didn't understand that God could actually do a heart transfer when we got born again. Like, I know the moment I got born again, I went back to my college dorm room and I was grieved by what I had in the room. Nobody told me. I walked in, I grabbed out all the alcohol, I grabbed out all the pornography. Why did I have pornography? I don't know. I grabbed out the pornography and I dumped it. Nobody told me to do that. But my heart was tender to things that before I would have laughed at weren't funny anymore. Things that I would have been entertained by, I felt grieved by. When you have a new heart, you have a sensitivity. Witchcraft will develop a false sensitivity to the spirit realm, but it's the realm of darkness. It's the realm of energy. Whereas we are the realm of the leading of the Holy Spirit. And so I do feel like there's a lot of witchcraft because there's a lot of hunger and there's a lot of evil coming into our world.
Yes, thank you. That's such a holistic answer, and thank you just for breaking that down and explaining it. I want to shift gears a little bit here and talk about another challenge that a lot of women or girls are facing. And you talk about this in your book, and this is boundaries, and particularly in the area of saying no when it's appropriate and doing so unapologetically. So I just want to ask you, what in your own life experiences has informed your ability to say no without backing down?
Yes. Well, I feel like there was 2 contagions released during the pandemic, and one was COVID and one was cowardice. I feel like a lot of people lost their voice. If they said something but didn't say it a certain way, people got mad at them. If they said something else, then people got mad at them. And what I found is a lot of people canceled themselves rather. They didn't have to be canceled. They just canceled.
Such a good point.
And the people that had clarity and vision or hope, they went silent. And then chaos came in, and chaos and confusion and division came in with the loudest voice. And the people with any kind of clarity were quiet. So I have learned that if I do not speak with conviction, then I'm speaking in a place where someone can talk me out of it. So like when you just can say no, I'm just not sure. That's not really a no. That's like try to talk me out of it.
Yeah.
But just saying no and just being simple on stuff is important. You don't have to be mean.
Yeah.
You can hear. Like, for example, going to social media, because that is such a big world right now. People don't understand that your social media platform, Joy, my social media platform, Christina, yours, they're a guest. They're a guest on that platform. And if I opened the door and somebody started attacking my husband, my kids, or throwing a fit, I'd ask them to leave. I wouldn't say, oh, I'm so sorry. Here, please act up as much as you want in my house. Like I have the right to steward or pastor my page. And I have learned that you have the right to say, maybe you're having a bad day, so I'm going to restrict you, but you have the right to block other people. Especially if they're attacking other people on your page, and they're just spewing hate and anger and confusion and lies sometimes. John and I are constantly being accused of being part of a group that actually doesn't even exist. I was like, are we part of this? And John was like, no, we call it NAR. I'm like, what is NAR? So I like look it up, and so then I call somebody that they said is on it, and I'm like, hey, I know we're not part of NAR. What is NAR? And they're like, it's a made up name for anybody that this other group doesn't like. And I'm like, what? So it's not even a thing. They're like, no, there's no membership. There's just like, it's just, and this is what we're doing. We are alienating people that we should be having conversations with. And we're having conversations with people we should not even be talking to.
Yeah, I love this quote. You said, disagreement does not equal hate. And we live in a time where people think if you don't agree, you can't engage. So as a Christian,
I think that's when we need to engage.
Yes. Yes.
So that we can learn.
Yes, yeah. And just speaking on the future is male and female. Today there's such like a contentious argument between men and women, especially on the YouTube space. We have I'm sure you have sons, so I'm sure you've heard of like Andrew Tate and all of these men who are in the YouTube manosphere and who just spew out kind of hateful dialogue towards women. And in your book, you say that toxic masculinity can never call for us responding in toxic femininity. And I want to hear what is
my book. I'm so proud of you.
Yes, I did. And I loved it. And I just want to hear, what do you think is the proper way to respond to toxic masculinity? How do you respond to that? Should women respond at all?
No. I mean, the Bible says they're not a fool according to their folly, lest they think they're wise in their own eyes. My boys love women. that my boys, I actually think you have to train men not to love women. So I don't know. I don't know what all is going on with Andrew Tate. I do know that there's been an attack on men. And if he thinks the women are the source, then of course he would think that's who he should fight. But that's a lack of spiritual discernment. And that's a lack of really going to the root of the problem. That's just going to the symptom of the problem.
Yeah.
I think I always am about reverse engineering it. If there's toxic masculinity, then we need healing femininity. And so we need to find back again our source, which to me was like, let's go back to why woman was created. It's not good for man to be alone. Ish and Isha, their names were so similar. They reflected how they interacted with one another. The fall happens. Now Eve becomes what she does. But now, what did Jesus come to do? Seek and save that which was lost. So he didn't just say saving the lost. He saved the lost relationship to male and female, man to man, sister to sister, people on the earth, parents and children. Any area that suffered loss in the fall, the gospel should be preached to recover what was lost. We tend to just preach to the lost. Like, you want to get saved? Raise your hand. We tend to not preach to what's been lost in family. We tend to preach what's been lost in marriage. And the two genders. I mean, when God says to the woman, your desire will be for your husband and he will rule over you, that was not a blessing. That was not like, guess what? You're going to desire your husband and he's going to dominate you. Well done. I mean, and when he said to the man, hey, you're going to work the ground and it's going to fight you. So now we see this conflict, but, and again, I read the Midrash along with the scriptures, and there's evidence that Eve did not leave at the same time as Adam, because it's very clear. It says, now lest the man put forth his hand and also eat from the tree of life and live forever, that he must leave. And then it says, so God cast out the man. Like it's man. Read King James if you're like, I don't like the. And so man. So God said to her, your desire is going to be more for him than for me. Yeah. Now we have to work out what that looks like. And so I feel like after I'm gonna like have to look for Andrew Tate now. I do know there's a lot of people that, and I do feel like some of them have very valid points. They just don't have a good solution.
You were prophesied over a few times in your life, and someone had you and your husband stand up, and he said that you would be quote unquote shot at from both sides.
It's like, can I opt out?
Yeah. And I honor you, because speaking the truth sometimes causes that to happen. And so when you have to speak the hard truth, how do you handle that type of public criticism? Even with them saying bigots, you're the family that I think of that is not a bigot. Yeah. I sometimes wonder, like, wow, have they moved to different places? Where does their intelligence come from as far as diversity? Yeah. And so when you stand up and you tell the truth and you get shot at from both sides, quote, because I don't want anybody to think you guys got shot literally, but how do you handle that type of public criticism?
So, I'm 64 now. I don't know that I could have handled it at 34.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm being honest.
Yeah, you look amazing, by the way.
You look amazing.
Absolutely blessed.
Well, thank you.
Look amazing.
See my gray hair. See it?
And beautiful. Still beautiful. Yeah. And that's in style too. You noticed that.
And you ask a little bit about this. Okay. Being Italian, I don't know if you know the roots of Italians. The Italians were despised. They were, like my dad, I remember, I have, like I mentioned, I have my eye. My dad would have to take me to Chicago to get my artificial eye replaced. And I can still remember as a little girl, he tried to take me into a restaurant and they wouldn't let him in. And my dad is not a white Anglo-Saxon looking Protestant person. He looks like Saddam Hussein. I mean, he's not alive anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very dark. So then when I started having kids, and my husband in his fraternity, his best friend, and part of our wedding party was Black. We never, like, to be honest with you, we never thought, we never felt uncomfortable. And then when we moved to Orlando, in our neighborhood, we were poor. My son's best friend was Justin, and he was Black. And then when I moved to another house, I pulled into the driveway of Dr. Batson, and he had 3 boys, and they were Black. And I said, well, can your sons be friends with my boys? So I never thought, I never thought I was doing even something diverse. I just thought, these
Humans are humans.
That's, I never even thought I'm being diverse, I'm being inclusive. I just thought, these are my neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
My boys, when we moved to Colorado, I remember we were at a school play, and Austin was, I think he was in 6th grade. And he said, Mom, do you see anything wrong at this school? And at the time, he was starting to become aware, like, my boys seeing girls. So I was like, are there mini skirts? I mean, I'm looking at her. I'm looking around like, are there girls dressed like hoes here? I mean, I'm looking around, and I was like, is that a girl? And he's like, Mom, there's no Black kids in this class. And I was like, you're right. And he's like, yeah, this is weird. And I said, okay. Now, it was a public school, and it was in Colorado Springs. And, that was the first time that I even noticed that my boys would have noticed. We just didn't think about those things. And I don't know. I don't know if being persecuted as being Italians was important. I had my 2 oldest grandkids over, my one that turned 15 today, and then my one who is 14. And I said, I'm going to make a big Italian meal for you, and then I'm going to show you a movie. And they're like, sure, they think that's great. So we make a big Italian meal, and we watch a movie, and it was called Cabrini, and it was talking about the Italians, how they lived in the sewers of New York, and what they did, and how one generation pioneers for the next generation. And they were watching it, and it's tragic. It's poverty, it's prejudice, it's everything that's ungodly and unhealthy and unkind. Yeah. And then I showed them, I said, I'm going to show you your grandfather, because he died. I said, I'm going to show you your grandfather. And they said, and I showed them my father, and this is him with clothes, with holes in it. And he looks just like these little kids living on the streets in New York. And I said,
so cute.
I said, that is your grandfather. Mm-hmm. And he was raised in poverty, and his mother worked as a prostitute when her husband died. And I said, don't make anybody make you be ashamed of who you are. Mm-hmm. I said, we are pioneers, and we are kind-hearted people, and we are not going to allow labels to be put on us. And and also I was talking to somebody that was kind of, I probably disagree on some stuff, and I did say, you do know that the Italians actually were a major force in actually the acceptance of Blacks, and they were like, no, we didn't. I said, Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra, if they wouldn't let Sammy Davis Jr. in, they wouldn't perform.
That's right.
Yeah. True.
I said, the Italians took over all the music, and they were like, you don't do this, you don't put them, you don't put them in the movies. And I said, so I don't want to be excused because of my relatives' choices. And I said, the Bible says that the children are not to pay for the sins of the fathers. Then we don't pay for the sins of our great-great-grandparents. And I said, but what we need to do is we need to move forward with confidence and strength. And we need to listen, but we need to learn, so that my grandkids aren't having the same conversations. And that's kind of where I've always been like, how do we move forward without shame and guilt? And penalty or fear, or because that's not what God wants.
Just a last quote I had in your book. This is an amazing quote that kind of like encapsulated the whole book, The Fight for Female, for me. And you said that when we don't feel like it's possible to align with the higher or to reach the higher, we try to align ourselves with the lesser. And I just wanted to hear you explain what that means, especially in terms of women trying to find fulfillment today.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's lesser for a woman to try to act like a man. I can't remember exactly how she said it, but the prime minister of Israel, the woman who was a school teacher that went over to Israel and became the prime minister, Golda Meir, said, I don't know why women are trying to be equal to men. Women have always been able to do more. She said, we can have babies, we can nurse babies, and we can do anything they do professionally. So I'm not saying that as a slam on men. I'm saying there's something that's beautiful and unique and strong that's entrusted to women, and it's lesser to try to do the achievement of man. When we need a world that needs the strength of women, we're connecting and having conversation. Women tend to be the connectors. And I was on a flight from Houston to, I think, Boston, and I was sitting next to somebody, and this was a few years ago, from Exxon, and it was back when gas prices were high, and I was like, what the heck? Can we bring them down? Can we get those things down? And he said, well, I do research and development. I'm like, and he was trying to explain to me how much it costs them to find, the fossil fuel or the gas or whatever. And I asked him, I said, how many women do you have on your team? And he said, I have one. And he said, but I would like to have more. I said, well, why don't you have more? He said, because they sabotage one another. And I said, what? He said, they sabotage one another. He said, I actually want to bring women in on the team to have them act like women because I need them to think different than the men. But they come in and they act like the men. And what I have learned is women tend to compete with one another to eliminate, whereas men will compete with one another to drive each other higher.
So
and
interesting.
Some of that is the musical chair dynamic. There's less room at the table for us. So we're trying to eliminate. So again, we've all talked about build our own table. Let's make a table. And it's okay for the women to have their own table for a while. But ideally, we need to have men and women at the table.
Yes.
We have all at the table, all races at the table.
Yes. I just think people need to hear this last thing from you. Advice to influencers in this time, YouTubers and influencers on how to handle social media attacks. I love how you said guard your heart over your reputation. But how can social YouTubers and influencers better handle social media attacks? Because I know it can be really hard.
So at the end of the day, if you know that you haven't been harsh, that you haven't been hateful, you can go to bed at peace. Because people will love you one week and hate you the next. And I know that I'm not trying to be demeaning to people. If you have made a mistake, own it. Like I'm very opinionated, and sometimes I shoot and then I aim. And I will step back. And if I said something and people were mad and they're like, oh, you were wrong about this, and you need to stay in your lane. I'm like, this is my lane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't get to say something.
Yes.
So I'm as much as possible, I'm going to say it with clarity. I'm going to say it with kindness. I'm going to say it with conviction. And if I do it wrong, God will talk to me, or I will. So I have a big theory. You let your critics refine you, but never define you. And they will always come at you and call you names. So you have to be wise enough to separate those two. They'll be like, Joy, you're this, you're entitled, you're what, whatever. I don't know what they come after you and say. They'll say something that attacks your character instead of helping you express yourself in a way where people are more receptive to hearing. You have to push that aside.
Yes.
Wonderful. And say, can I say it better? Can I say it clearer? Let my critics refine me. They don't define me. God defines me. Who I am as the daughter of the Most High, that defines me. If I can do better, I will do better in the future, but I am not answerable to them. I'm answerable to God. And, at the end of the day, you have to be the gatekeeper of your heart.
Yeah.
cannot allow transactional people to have intimate access to your heart.
Wow, what a great point.
You know,
Thank
and
you.
I brought this up in Godmothers. I said, there are people that are in your life that are transformational. And these are people that know your strengths and they know your weaknesses, but they're in your corner. And they will fight for you. They will, every time somebody punches you, Christina, every time somebody thinks they have you down, Joy, they're going to say, get up, get up. And they are always transformational. They are committed to bringing out the best in you. Then there's transactional. And transactional, they want to get the best out of you. Like, what can Joy do for me? Okay, well, and it's going to be a great relationship as long as, Joy, you're doing something for them and they're doing something for you. It's a transaction. Transactional, they're there for you when it's to their advantage and they're gone when it's not. You say something on social media that you're taking heat for, they may even agree with you, but they're not going to like that post because, oh, she's getting heat. I'm going to step back. And that is a form of cowardice. But all unite. There would be a courageous following. When people follow courage right now, the most courageous people are the people declaring wrong things, not the people declaring right things. And that's a whole nother conversation right now. So transactional. And then there's strangers. Who are these people that think they can attack you guys? Or me? Who are they? Do I know them? Do I have a phone number? Do they really know me? Do they really care? Or are they just angry?
I like how you go to bed and you say, good night, fake world. Sometimes you have to do that.
Every night.
Miss Lisa Bevere, Lisa Bevere, thank you so much. Me and Joy were talking last night and we agree you are truly one of the greatest ministers of our time.
Yeah, and it's such an
truly
honor.
It has been an honor. We are so deeply appreciative that you came today.
Thank you.
It has been wonderful. God continue to bless you and your family. We love y'all.
Yes, and everyone, make sure you get your copy of The Fight for Female. Please, please, please.
Fight for Female. And one more thing. I was reading this and I thought males need to hear this. So hopefully one of the Beveres write Fight for Male. Maybe.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Fight for Male. The Fight for Male.
One of my cute sons can do that.
Maybe. That'll be wonderful. We'll be looking for that one too, God willing. Thank you so much.
You guys are awesome. Bye.